Back in November of last year, we talked briefly about Ezra chapter 1 through chapter 6. I really want to go back and talk about chapter 4 and the time we have together on this occasion because there's some details that bear repeating. History, unfortunately, continues to repeat itself and not necessarily in very positive ways. In the beginning of Ezra, there has been a decree from now the leader of the Persian Empire to allow Jews who have been in Babylonian captivity to return to Jerusalem if they desire. Zerubbabel, Ezra, there are almost 50,000 that go back with them, with the idea of rebuilding the temple. Once they arrive, those who have been actually living in that area for the last 7 decades make this kind of statement in chapter 4 of Ezra and verse number 2. They came to Zerubbabel, the heads of the fathers' houses, and said to them, "Let us build with you, for we seek your God as you do. We've sacrificed to him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, who brought us here." As we mentioned back in November, that's partially true. The problem is they had not given up the deities that they brought with them when they were displaced from their homeland and actually find themselves around the area of Jerusalem. So do they worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Kind of. But they worship every other deity that they possibly can. So those are the leaders of this group that come back from Persia to Jerusalem. The Jews come back to rebuild the temple, say, no, we're going to do this ourselves. We've been given that responsibility. For the time we have together, I want to talk about how do you stop incentive? How do you kill the incentive of somebody who wants to actually accomplish a task? Because you find that in this chapter. To begin with, they say, well, let us help you do this. It's not really an honest statement. In fact, the statement that they make, "Let us help you build," is something that actually shows up as really being disingenuous. It's not sincere, because in verse number 4, the people of the land tried to discourage the people of Judah. They troubled them in building. Now, wait a minute. If you recognize that they're saying, well, it's our job, we've been given the responsibility to build, if you really want to help, wouldn't you suggest, well, let us help you get the materials together. We'll let you do the building, but give us a list of what we can actually help provide. They don't do that, nor do they want to. They want to be involved in that building process. And if it's the responsibility of those who came back, I don't care. I want to be involved in that anyway. It's a disingenuous statement that they make. And then the statement that's found in verse 4 and verse 5, they discourage the people. Verse number 5, they hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose. What's involved is not just being disingenuous. There are discouraging actions that are involved as well. We will hire people. If we can't help build, we're going to hire people to frustrate any kind of activity involved in what you are doing. We don't care. Interesting turn of events. And as you continue in this chapter, if you continue down verse 6 down through verse 16, they actually denounce what these people are doing. In the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, they wrote an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. And here's what they say. Verse 12. Let it be known to the king that the Jews who came up from you have come to us at Jerusalem and are building the rebellious and evil city and are finishing its walls and repairing its foundations. Now, wait a minute. Didn't you want to actually help in that process? So why don't you tell them that we're endeavoring to be rebellious against you too? Oh, we're going to leave those details out. It continues. Verse number 13, let it be known to the king that if this city is built and the walls completed, they will not pay tax, they will not pay tribute or custom. The king's treasury will be diminished. How do you know that? You don't. So you're actually basing this kind of statement upon faulty assumptions. That's not really a very accurate way to actually approach any kind of problem. Verse number 14, because we received support from the palace, it was not proper for us to see the king dishonored, therefore we have sent information to the king. Wait a minute, you wanted to help build the temple and the surrounding edifices, including the wall. and you're condemning them? Oh, the disingenuousness of that first statement is something that's actually very, very apparent. By the time you get to verse number 16, we inform the king that if this city is rebuilt and its walls are completed, the result will be that you will have no dominion beyond the river. You're not going to have power over these people if you let them finish this project. But wait a minute, did you want to help with that project when you thought it was in your interest? But now you're against it? What happens as a result? Verse number 18. The king sends back a letter. And in that letter, he says in verse 21, give the command to make these men cease, that this city may not be built until the command is given by me. So what's involved? They're denouncing and vilifying the action that they propose to be involved in. There's discouragement that they try to make as severe as possible to stop these individuals. When that doesn't work, they're actually sending a letter back to the king. And yet there was a disingenuous statement to begin with that we want to help. No, you don't. Killing someone's incentive for working is exactly what these people are doing. And you start thinking, well, actually, what did they do? Well, they're lying about their motive. They're lying about the intent of helping in that project, number 1, in verse 2. Verse 4 and verse 5, they're spreading lies about those who are actually doing the work that they wanted to be doing. But since they're not doing it, they're going to lie about those who are. And that last point, verse 16, they fabricate lies about the future, so much so that they are successful in stopping the work. Let's kill the incentive of people around us because we don't like them doing what they're doing. We want to be involved in doing it a different way. If you start analyzing what's been happening within this country, not just today, but it's kind of reared its head over and over again throughout the last several decades. Programs of benevolence that actually kill incentive, stop people from wanting to be involved in any kind of production of work, any kind of productivity that's really supplanted by the government giving you a handout. That doesn't actually help an incentive. It takes it away. Recently I've heard on the news that there's a movement to basically disenfranchise those companies that have spent so much money in working for development of vaccines for this pandemic. The government thinks it needs to be in charge of it and take it away from those companies that have patents on their work. If that's the case, and that's something that continues, what kind of incentive would anybody have for doing something on their own if they know that their effort, the money that they spend in any kind of research or development or invention is going to be taken away by somebody else who didn't do anything in the process other than just take their work away? That's what happened here in Ezra chapter 4. They were able to stop the work there at Jerusalem all the days of this particular king until a new king came on the horizon and realized there was no reason to stop this work, and it finally starts again. We need to be individuals that help people strengthen the incentives they have for being productive in our culture, not taking it away. Tragedy? I hope the pendulum starts swinging in the other direction, because right now, tragedy is something that continues to build. Interesting how events even in the Old Testament relate to situations today. Please stay safe. We'll talk.